Have you ever noticed how one breath can change everything? Think about it as a sigh of relief, a deep inhale of inspiration, or the quiet pause before making a life-changing decision. Breath is not just air, it is creation in motion. And for the next 60 seconds, if you breathe in a very specific way, you will align with the universe in a way that commands it to deliver what you've been waiting for. Breath is the invisible key that unlocks the state of consciousness where your desires already exist. Every outer condition you see began first as an inner assumption, and the fastest way to shift assumption is to shift your state. And nothing shifts state faster than breath. When you breathe slowly, deeply, and with intention, you silence the storm of doubt. The noise of fear dissolves, and what remains is pure awareness, the place where imagination imprints reality. With each inhale, picture the life you long for is already here. With each exhale, release the struggle of trying to make it happen. This simple rhythm transforms the breath into a prayer without words, a signal to the unseen that you are already living in the end. For 60 seconds, breathe as though you already are the one who has received what you desire. Let the chest rise not with worry but with fulfillment. Let the body relax into gratitude, not tension. As you do, something invisible shifts. The inner world begins to reorganize. The breath carries the feeling, and the feeling shapes the unseen into form. This is not wishful thinking. It is alignment. It is the sacred act of embodying the end before it appears. When you live this way, even for a single minute, the universe bends to reflect the breath you breathed in faith. Breath as awareness anchor. The way you breathe directs the quality of your awareness. When you breathe with intention, you bring yourself into alignment with the unseen creative force. Breath is not merely the unconscious rhythm that sustains the body. It is the bridge between what is visible and what is invisible, between thought and form, between the restless activity of the mind and the deep stillness of creation. Every inhale is a doorway inward, and every exhale is a release into possibility. When most people breathe, they do so absent-mindedly, unaware that the very pattern of their breathing is shaping the state they are inhabiting. Shallow, rapid breathing mirrors a scattered mind. Slow, deliberate breathing reflects a consciousness anchored in presence. Awareness follows breath, and breath, when guided intentionally, can awaken a dimension of self that is normally hidden beneath the noise of daily thought. Consider how in moments of stress or fear, the breath shortens, almost as if the body is bracing itself for an attack. The chest tightens and the rhythm becomes irregular, signaling to the mind that danger is near. Yet in truth, nothing may be threatening in the outer world. The danger only exists in perception. In contrast, when you consciously slow the breath, filling the lungs with measured inhales and releasing them with gentle exhales, the entire nervous system softens. The body calms and the mind begins to quiet. What is happening here is more than biology, it is the conscious redirection of awareness. Breath is not only oxygen for the body, but also fuel for the imagination. To breathe with intention is to command your awareness to stay present, to inhabit this moment fully, without fleeing into the regrets of the past or the fears of the future. Intention transforms the ordinary act of breathing into a spiritual practice. You are not simply moving air. You are moving energy, moving consciousness, moving the creative power that shapes reality itself. Through breath, you are in dialogue with the unseen. Each inhale is an invitation to receive inspiration, and each exhale is a declaration of surrender, a trust that what you seek already exists in the invisible realm, awaiting only your alignment to become visible. Awareness without breath easily slips into wandering. You may try to focus on a vision, yet if your breathing is shallow or erratic, the mind continues to dart between distractions, unable to settle. Breath acts as the anchor that holds awareness steady. Just as a ship cannot drift far when its anchor is secure, your mind cannot drift far into doubt or fear when breath has been steadied by intention. This stability creates the perfect ground for imagination to take root. When the breath is calm, the inner screen of the mind becomes clear, and what you picture there can imprint itself more deeply. The unseen creative force responds not to scattered thought, but to focused awareness fused with feeling. Breath delivers this fusion. When you breathe as though you are already fulfilled, you begin to feel fulfilled. When you breathe as though you are safe, loved, and complete, those very states begin to saturate your consciousness. The unseen force does not distinguish between what you call real and imagined. It only mirrors the state you occupy. Breath is the gateway to entering and sustaining that state. Imagine someone who desires abundance, but continually breathes in a hurried, shallow way. Their body is tense, their awareness fixed on lack, their energy signaling urgency and worry. Though they may affirm prosperity with words, their breath betrays their true state. Now imagine another who sits quietly, closes their eyes and breathes deeply, as if already at peace with a life of overflowing supply. Each inhale is taken with gratitude, each exhale with contentment, as if nothing is missing. Their awareness aligns with fullness, and the unseen responds by arranging circumstances that mirror that state. The difference lies not in effort but in alignment, and alignment begins with breath. Breathing with intention also teaches surrender. Many cling tightly to their desires, fearing they may never arrive, but intentional breath releases that tension. When you exhale fully, you experience letting go, a miniature rehearsal of trust. You no longer hold the breath in desperation, you allow it to leave, confident that the next inhale will arrive. This same rhythm of trust can be applied to the unseen. Release your desire with faith, knowing that what you have breathed in awareness must return to you in form. Breath makes this cycle tangible, reminding you that receiving and releasing are natural, inevitable, and effortless. Furthermore, breath refines sensitivity to the unseen. In silence, as you breathe intentionally, subtle impressions arise. An inspired thought, a vivid inner picture, a quiet assurance. Without the stilling power of breath, these impressions may be drowned out by the turbulence of restless thought. With breath as the anchor, the noise fades, and the whispers of the creative force become audible. Awareness becomes attuned not to the chaos of the external, but to the clarity of the internal. When you align breath with vision, you merge the physical with the spiritual. You inhale as though drawing in the reality you wish to live, and you exhale as though releasing all doubt of its arrival. You embody now what you wish to see later, and by doing so, later bends itself to match now. Breath makes the invisible tangible. It is the unseen hand guiding awareness toward the truth of being. State before form, every manifestation begins as a state of being. Breath slows the mind and allows you to enter the state of the wish fulfilled. Everything that exists in the outer world once lived in an unseen inner state. The visible is only the shadow cast by the invisible, and the invisible is the realm of states of consciousness. A state is not simply a passing mood or fleeting emotion, but an entire way of being, a lens through which reality is interpreted, experienced, and shaped. To change anything in life, one must first change the state from which life is being lived. Form is always the effect, but state is always the cause. Most people attempt to alter their world by manipulating the form, trying to change conditions, people, or events directly. Yet this is like rearranging shadows on a wall while ignoring the object that cast them. The shadows may shift temporarily, but the true cause remains untouched. Transformation requires entering a new state of being, for from that state new conditions flow naturally and inevitably. Breath is the key that unlocks this shift. When the breath is restless, the mind is restless. A scattered mind clings to old assumptions, replaying the same beliefs that created the current reality. Breath slows the inner dialogue, softens the racing thoughts, and creates an opening. In that opening, one can step into a new state, the state of the wish fulfilled. This is not an act of straining or forcing, but of allowing. As the breath deepens, awareness expands, and in that expansion, imagination becomes free to impress a new pattern upon the subconscious. The state of the wish fulfilled is not a vague hope or desire. It is the inner conviction that what is longed for already exists in the unseen. To enter this state, one must breathe as if already at rest, already complete, already in possession of the desired condition. Breath carries feeling, and feeling is the substance of the state. When you inhale slowly with the assurance of already being fulfilled, the body responds with relaxation, the mind with calm, and the spirit with certainty. The outer world may show no evidence yet, but within, you are dwelling in the end. Think of an actor preparing for a role. The script may describe a character with wealth, power, or joy, but the actor cannot simply repeat the words mechanically. To embody the character, the actor must enter the state of being that character, feeling their confidence, their ease, their authority. Breath becomes the tool to steady the body and open the imagination until the role feels real. In the same way, life responds not to what you wish, but to the state you embody. The universe plays back the role you inwardly accept as your own. Breath is sacred because it allows you to dissolve resistance. Doubt, fear, and impatience live in the body as tension. Shoulders tighten, the chest contracts, and the breath becomes shallow. This physical state mirrors the inner state of lack. But when you breathe deeply, slowly, intentionally, you release that tension and with it, the grip of old assumptions. Each exhale becomes an act of surrender, releasing the state of limitation. Each inhale becomes an act of acceptance, drawing in the state of fulfillment. Over time, the rhythm of breath reconditions the subconscious to dwell naturally in the new state. The outer world may still reflect the old state for a time, But persistence in dwelling inwardly in the state of the wish fulfilled must eventually crystallize into visible form. The law cannot be broken. If the seed of a new state is planted and watered with attention, the harvest must appear. Breath is the watering of that seed, keeping awareness fixed on the inner reality instead of being swayed by appearances. Consider a person longing for health. If they breathe anxiously, scanning their body for signs of illness, they remain in the state of being unwell. The breath reinforces tension and the state persists. But if they breathe as one already whole, inhaling with gratitude for vitality and exhaling with ease, they shift the state. The body responds, energy reorganizes, and the outer form begins to catch up with the inner conviction. Or imagine someone desiring love. They may cling to loneliness, breathing in sorrow, exhaling in despair, reinforcing the state of lack. But by shifting breath, calm, steady, infused with the feeling of already being cherished, they enter the state of love fulfilled. In that state, they no longer search desperately outward, for within the union already exists. The outer form must mirror the shift, drawing circumstances that reflect the new state. States are infinite, and each breath is an opportunity to choose one. With every inhale, you can claim abundance, peace, love, or joy. With every exhale, you can release limitation, fear, or doubt. The state you dwell in most consistently becomes the reality you experience. Breath is not just a function of survival, but the steering wheel of consciousness, guiding awareness into the chosen state. This is why true creation is effortless. You do not fight against the outer world or strive to make something happen. You simply breathe yourself into the state where it is already done. The stillness of breath makes room for imagination to live as reality, and in that living, the unseen rearranges itself into form. Breath reminds you that being precedes having, that inner assumption precedes outer condition, and that form is only the echo of state. Inner silence creates power. A still and rhythmic breath quiets inner chatter, making space for imagination to impress upon the subconscious. There is a power that does not come from striving, struggling, or forcing outcomes into being. It arises from the stillness within, a silence that is deeper than thought, more potent than effort, and more creative than any action taken outwardly. Most people live with a constant stream of inner chatter, thoughts racing, worries repeating, conversations replaying, and scenarios projected into the future. This noise consumes attention, scattering awareness across countless fragments of imagined problems and unfinished stories. As long as the inner world is noisy, imagination cannot work with precision. The subconscious cannot be impressed by images or feelings when they are buried beneath the clutter of restless thinking. To create deliberately, the first requirement is silence, and silence begins with breath. Breath has always been the most immediate tool for calming the mind. Notice how in moments of stress the breath becomes shallow and rapid, mirroring the agitation of thought. The body reflects the state of the mind, and the mind continues feeding on the signals of the body. It is a cycle of restlessness reinforcing itself. But when you intentionally slow the breath, making each inhale long and each exhale smooth, you disrupt this cycle. The body relaxes, and the mind, sensing that relaxation, begins to quiet. Thought no longer rushes forward with urgency. The endless chatter finds less momentum and space opens. This space is the silence where true power resides. Silence is not the absence of thoughts so much as it is the mastery of attention. You may still hear the echo of thoughts, but they no longer command you. They pass like clouds across the sky, while awareness rests anchored in breath. In this silence, imagination is no longer competing for energy. The picture you choose to hold, the feeling you choose to cultivate, can now sink deeply into the subconscious. Breath makes this possible because it roots awareness in the present moment, where imagination can be deliberately guided instead of scattered. When you breathe rhythmically, you synchronize the conscious and subconscious minds. The conscious mind, normally restless and analytical, is lulled into calm by the gentle pattern of breath. This calm allows impressions to bypass resistance. A new assumption, held with feeling, slips into the subconscious where it becomes a seed of reality. Without inner silence, that seed is easily lost among the noise of doubt and contradiction. With silence, the seed finds fertile ground. Consider the difference between planting a seed in soil that is constantly being disturbed versus planting it in soil that is still and nourished. In noisy soil, the seed cannot take root. In silent soil, it grows without interference. The same is true with imagination. If you attempt to impress a vision upon the subconscious while the mind is chattering with fear or impatience, the vision is quickly drowned out. But if you still the mind through breath, imagination is received clearly, and the subconscious accepts it as reality. The world outside is often chaotic, And if attention is given only to appearances, silence feels impossible. Yet breath gives you mastery regardless of external conditions. No matter what is happening around you, you can close your eyes, breathe slowly, and withdraw awareness inward. With each inhale, you step back from the noise of circumstances. With each exhale, you release the urge to react. Gradually, you find yourself in a sanctuary of silence, untouched by the outer world. From this place, imagination becomes the true architect of reality. Power arises because silence is not passive, it is active receptivity. In silence, you are not doing nothing. You are aligning with everything. You are tuning yourself to the unseen creative force that shapes life. You are allowing inspiration to surface, guidance to be heard, and visions to become vivid. This is why some of the most profound breakthroughs, insights, and manifestations occur in moments of stillness. The noise of thought conceals them, but silence reveals them. Through rhythmic breath, silence also becomes sustainable. A fleeting moment of quiet may bring relief, but to dwell in silence long enough for imagination to do its work requires rhythm. Rhythm steadies awareness, giving the mind a gentle focus. Instead of chasing thoughts, you ride the wave of inhale and exhale again and again. This rhythm creates continuity, and continuity deepens the impression. Imagination in silence is not a fleeting wish, but a sustained experience. When imagination is impressed upon the subconscious in this way, the outer world must conform. Circumstances, people, and events are drawn into alignment with the inner image. It seems miraculous, yet it is law. The outer is always an echo of the inner, and the inner is shaped by what the subconscious accepts. Silence makes acceptance possible because it strips away contradiction. A single image held in silence carries more creative power than 1,000 thoughts scattered in noise. This is why ancient teachings often linked breath, silence, and creation. They understood that power is not in multiplying effort, but in quieting effort until the unseen does the work. Silence is the womb of creation, and breath is the entrance to that womb. Each time you return to silence through breath, you step back into the creative source of life itself. Their imagination does not struggle, it simply is, and what simply is within must eventually appear without. The practice is simple, yet profound. Breathe slowly, rhythmically, until the chatter fades. Hold the image of the fulfilled desire lightly, not with strain but with ease. Allow the feeling of it to saturate your being, as if the silence itself were breathing that reality into you. Trust that what is impressed in silence must be expressed in form. Over time, the mind learns to rest more easily, the body to relax more deeply, and the inner world to become more vivid than the outer. From that inner vividness, power flows outward effortlessly, shaping life in accordance with the vision impressed upon the subconscious through the stillness of breath. Feeling is the bridge. Breathing deeply with the feeling of already having what you desire creates the inner atmosphere that bridges you to its manifestation. Creation is never about waiting for the external world to shift before you feel differently. It is always the opposite. You feel first, and then the world rearranges itself to echo that feeling. Feeling is the invisible bridge between what you long for and the experience of having it. It is not enough to repeat words of affirmation without emotion, or to visualize mechanically without sensation. The subconscious, which shapes reality, does not respond to empty statements, but to the quality of feeling impressed upon it. Feeling is the language of the unseen, and breath is the tool that carries that language deeply into being. When you breathe deeply and deliberately, you create a rhythm that calms the nervous system, softens resistance, and makes room for new states to settle within you. In that softened state, imagination can be infused with emotion. To simply picture a scene of your desire is like sketching an outline. To breathe with the feeling of that desire is to fill the sketch with color and life. The deeper the breath, the richer the sensation, and the more real the imaginal experience becomes. The subconscious cannot distinguish between what is felt in imagination and what is felt in the outer world. It only knows the vibration of the feeling and moves to make it fact. Consider the difference between wishing for something and feeling its reality. Wishing is tinged with lack, an unspoken admission that what is wanted is not yet here. Feeling, however, dissolves the gap. To feel abundance is to live abundance, even if outwardly the bank account has not changed. To feel love is to live love, even if no one has yet walked into your life to mirror it. This bridge of feeling allows you to inhabit the end before it arrives, and by doing so, you magnetize the unseen to arrange itself in harmony with the state you occupy. Breath makes this process tangible. Each inhale can be imagined as drawing in the atmosphere of your fulfilled desire. Each exhale can be imagined as releasing the disbelief, the doubt, the tension that denies its reality. Slowly, breath by breath, you condition the inner world to reflect the end. For example, if health is the desire, each inhale can be filled with the sensation of vitality, ease, and energy, while each exhale carries away the heaviness of illness. Over time, this rhythmic breathing with feeling creates an inner atmosphere so convincing that the subconscious accepts it as true, and the body begins to align with that truth. The same principle applies to love. If you long for companionship, you may spend time in loneliness, breathing in sorrow without realizing it. But by consciously shifting the breath and infusing it with the feeling of already being cherished, already being embraced, you step onto the bridge of love fulfilled. You inhale as though you are drawing in affection and warmth, and you exhale as though you are releasing isolation. With repetition, the feeling of love becomes more real inwardly than the outer absence, and soon the outer world must rise to meet the inner conviction. Feeling is the bridge because it unites the invisible state with the visible form. Without feeling, imagination remains distant, a picture that never touches the heart. With feeling, the picture comes alive and the subconscious is moved. The bridge must be walked internally before it can appear externally. When you breathe deeply with feeling, you are already walking that bridge, already moving toward the destination of your desire, even if your feet never leave the ground. It is important to recognize that feeling is not effortful. It is not about straining to conjure emotions or forcing enthusiasm. True feeling arises naturally when you surrender to the imaginal act with breath. As you slow the breath, you relax the grip of doubt, and in that relaxation, the feeling of fulfillment arises easily. You are not trying to make something happen. You are simply dwelling in the inner atmosphere where it is already done. This dwelling is the secret, for the subconscious accepts dwelling as fact, and life reflects it. Breathing with feeling also teaches you to live in the present rather than postponing fulfillment into the future. Many sabotage themselves by saying, "One day I will be happy when this happens." But when you breathe with the feeling of already being happy now, you dissolve the illusion of waiting. You become the one who has already crossed the bridge, and because consciousness is the only reality, the outer must conform. The bridge of feeling is unshakable because it does not depend on appearances. The outer world may show contradiction for a time, but as long as you remain faithful to the inner atmosphere, the bridge will carry you across. Breath sustains this faith. With every inhale and exhale, you recommit to the state of fulfillment, reinforcing the feeling until it becomes your natural dwelling place. Once it is natural, manifestation is inevitable. Feeling is not a means to an end. It is the end experienced now. The joy you seek is not waiting on a future condition. It is available in this moment through breath and imagination. By practicing this, you realize that manifestation is not about attracting something outside yourself, but about aligning with the reality that already exists within. Breath makes the alignment steady, and feeling makes it real. This combination becomes the bridge that carries you unfailingly from desire to fulfillment. Imagination in motion, each breath can be synchronized with an imaginal act, turning a simple inhale and exhale into a living prayer. Imagination is the creative force at the root of every experience, every condition, and every unfolding of life. It is not idle fantasy, but the blueprint of reality, the silent architect that carves form out of formlessness. Yet imagination on its own can drift aimlessly if it is not anchored, and breath is the anchor that steadies imagination and transforms it from scattered thought into deliberate creation. Each breath is an opportunity to fuse imagination with rhythm, to turn a natural bodily function into a conscious act of creation. By synchronizing breath with imaginal acts, the unseen becomes motion and motion becomes prayer. When you breathe, you are not merely exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide. You are participating in a rhythm that mirrors the rhythm of life itself. Inhale is receiving, exhale is releasing, and between the two lies the pause of stillness. This cycle is the same cycle through which imagination moves. You receive an image of your fulfilled desire, you release it in trust, and you rest in the assurance that it is done. To link breath with imagination is to make this cycle conscious, to deliberately live the law with every inhale and exhale. For example, imagine that you are breathing in abundance. As you inhale, see yourself already living in the life you desire, holding the key to your new home, feeling the ease of financial freedom, or experiencing the joy of overflowing supply. Allow the breath to carry the sensation deep into the body. As you exhale, release every trace of fear or doubt, as though the air leaving your lungs is carrying away limitation. With each cycle, you are no longer simply breathing. You are rehearsing creation, embodying the end, and impressing it upon the subconscious. This synchronization transforms breath into a living prayer, because prayer is not words recited without conviction, but the assumption of the state desired. True prayer is the movement of awareness into the end. When you link this movement with breath, you turn every inhale and exhale into a declaration of faith. You are saying, without words, it is already done. The subconscious understands this language of rhythm and feeling more clearly than any spoken request, and it begins to reorganize your reality accordingly. Breath also makes imagination more vivid. Many struggle to visualize because the mind is restless, distracted, or doubting. But when you slow the breath and let it guide the imaginal act, the mind quiets. The picture becomes sharper, the sensations richer, and the feeling more tangible. Inhale as if you are drawing the scene closer to you. Exhale as if you are stepping into it fully. Soon the line between imagination and reality begins to blur, because within consciousness, no such line exists. The power of this practice lies in repetition. Just as the heart beats in rhythm to sustain life, imagination in motion sustains creation when practiced consistently. Each breath is a stroke on the canvas of reality, each imaginal act a color added to the masterpiece. With time, the subconscious accepts the imaginal scene as the only truth, and the outer world bends itself to match. This is not effortful work, but effortless rhythm, as natural as breathing itself. Consider someone who longs for healing. If they simply hope for health while breathing shallowly with tension, they reinforce the state of illness. But if they align each inhale with the image of vitality and each exhale with the release of pain, they place imagination in motion. Each breath becomes a prayer of wholeness, saturating the subconscious with the state of already being healed. The outer body must eventually reflect what the inner body has rehearsed breath by breath. The same applies to love. If you desire companionship, you may use the inhale to picture yourself embraced in warmth, sharing laughter, or holding hands with the one who cherishes you. As you exhale, you release the loneliness, the fear of rejection, the doubt that it will come. Each breath becomes a union, an imaginal act that is not postponed to the future but lived now. In this way, love is not sought, it is embodied. The bridge between desire and fulfillment is crossed one breath at a time. By making imagination a living rhythm through breath, you dissolve the idea that prayer is something separate from daily life. Prayer becomes continuous, effortless, a constant dialogue with the unseen. You no longer set aside special moments to enter the state of fulfillment. You live in it with every inhale and exhale. Breath carries imagination into the depths of the subconscious more surely than fleeting thoughts ever could. Imagination in motion also teaches surrender. Just as you trust that each breath will be followed by another, you trust that each imaginal act, when impressed in rhythm, will unfold into form. You do not cling to the desire or strain to make it real. You breathe it, live it, and release it, knowing that the unseen has already accepted it. This surrender is not passive but deeply powerful, for it shifts you from asking to receiving, from hoping to knowing. When imagination moves with breath, life itself becomes the prayer. The boundaries between creation and daily living dissolve. You find yourself breathing abundance, breathing love, breathing joy, not as a practice to reach something distant, but as a way of being in the present moment. The present becomes saturated with fulfillment, and the future becomes a mirror of that fulfillment. Each breath carries you deeper into the reality of your choice, until the outer world must echo what the inner world has rehearsed faithfully through the rhythm of imagination in motion. Living in the end through breath, by breathing as if the desire were already realized, you embody the end, and life has no choice but to mirror it back to you. To live in the end is to abandon the posture of waiting and instead assume the position of already being. It is to stop placing fulfillment in the distance of someday, and to claim it as the state in which you dwell now. Breath becomes the most direct way to embody this truth, because breath is always immediate, always present, and always accessible. You cannot breathe yesterday's air or tomorrow's air. You can only breathe now. And so by attaching imagination to breath, you bring the end into the present moment, making it real in consciousness long before it appears in form. When you breathe as if the desire were already realized, you shift the entire atmosphere of your being. The body relaxes because it no longer strains toward a future. The mind quiets because it no longer argues with appearances. The heart softens because it no longer doubts. Every inhale becomes an acceptance of the wish fulfilled. Every exhale a release of the struggle that once defined the waiting. Over time, this rhythm transforms not only the way you feel inwardly, but also the way the outer world organizes itself around you. Living in the end is not pretending or daydreaming. Pretending implies that you are acting out something false. Living in the end means you know within that what you assume is already true in the unseen. Breath anchors this knowing. If abundance is your aim, breathe as one who is already free from financial worry. Let the inhale carry the sensation of security, as though each breath is proof of overflowing supply. Let the exhale release the anxiety of lack, as though it never belonged to you. If love is your desire, breathe as though already cherished. With every inhale, feel the warmth of companionship, and with every exhale, release the notion of loneliness. In this way, breath becomes the act of embodying the end. The subconscious accepts the state in which you dwell most consistently, and breath is the surest way to sustain a state. Thoughts may wander, doubts may surface, appearances may contradict, but breath is steady. With each inhale and exhale, you recommit to the end, reinforcing it until it becomes second nature. Eventually, you no longer try to live in the end, you simply are in it, because your very breathing has made it your dwelling place. The subconscious then brings forth circumstances, people, and events that mirror the end you have embodied. Breathing as if already fulfilled also dissolves impatience. Impatience arises when you believe the desire is far away, when you measure the gap between what is and what you wish it to be. But when you breathe fulfillment now, there is no gap to measure. You already possess, already are, already live. The breath convinces the body of this truth, and the body convinces the mind, until impatience gives way to peace. From this peace, manifestation unfolds naturally, without strain or delay, because nothing is blocking its arrival. Consider the rhythm of breath as a rehearsal of the state of the end. Each inhale is like stepping into the home you desire, feeling the walls, seeing the space, smelling the air as if it is already yours. Each exhale is the letting go of the old apartment, the old worries, the old sense of limitation. Each cycle of breath strengthens the conviction until the end feels more real than the current circumstance. And once it feels more real, the law requires that it must become visible. Living in the end through breath also teaches surrender. You do not hold your breath in desperation, trying to force oxygen into your lungs. You trust that each inhale will come and each exhale will follow. In the same way, you trust that by dwelling in the end, the unseen will provide the outer evidence in its perfect rhythm. There is no need to panic, no need to clutch. Breath shows you that receiving is natural, inevitable, and effortless. The same truth applies to desire. By living in the end, you align with a flow that cannot fail. Even when appearances contradict, breath carries you back into alignment. Suppose you face bills, loneliness, or illness, outer forms that deny your inner state. Instead of collapsing into fear, close your eyes and breathe. Inhale the reality of already being free, already being loved, already being whole. Exhale the doubt, the panic, the story that appearances would have you believe. You may do this quietly in the midst of the storm, and with each breath, you step out of the storm into the calm of the fulfilled end. Life must eventually mirror this calm, because outer form is only the shadow of inner being. To live in the end is to live in gratitude before the gift arrives in form. Breath makes this gratitude real. When you inhale, you can feel the joy of receiving. When you exhale, you can feel the satisfaction of release. Gratitude saturates the body with peace, and peace signals to the subconscious that the desire is already complete. The subconscious then arranges the world to reflect the gratitude you have already embodied. The great secret is that the end is never truly in the future. It exists now, waiting to be occupied. Breath gives you the doorway to walk into it. Every inhale is a step into that reality, every exhale a settling into its truth. As you dwell there more faithfully, the bridge between inner and outer disappears. The end that once seemed distant becomes your present experience, and life mirrors it back with precision, as it always must. So the next time you feel restless, doubtful, or impatient, don't fight your circumstances. Breathe. Breathe like the one who already has the answer. Breathe like the one who already lives in the reality they once only dreamed of. For in 60 seconds of true, intentional breath, you will discover that the universe doesn't delay, it delivers.